Wake up, people. We can't keep pretending we don't know why ICE agents are out there acting like they're at war with everyday folks. The real question isn't, why are they so aggressive? It's who set this tone from the very top. Let's lay it out straight, no sugarcoating, because this is happening right now in our country, and it's tearing at the fabric of what America is supposed to stand for. Right here in 2026, we've seen federal immigration agents involved in fatal shootings of U.S. citizens during enforcement actions and protests. Take Minneapolis. It's become ground zero for this nightmare. First, Renee Good, an unarmed woman, was shot multiple times by ICE agents while she was just trying to move her car during an encounter. Then, only weeks later, 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Preddy, an ICU nurse, was killed after he was recording agents on his phone. Videos and witness accounts show him getting swarmed, struck, thrown to the ground, and then shot, even though he wasn't charging at anyone or waving a weapon. Minnesota allows open carry, and the footage doesn't show him posing an immediate deadly threat. These are American citizens, not criminals evading deportation. Yet agents pulled the trigger in situations that scream overreaction. Why does this keep happening? Because the people running the show have framed compassion for immigrants and protesters as weakness, or worse, as enemy behavior. When leaders call those who stand up for humanity agitators, insurrectionists, or outright threats, it gives cover to agents to treat peaceful people like combatants. Protests erupt because families are being torn apart, communities raided, and rights trampled. But instead of dialogue, we get escalation. Tear gas, rubber bullets, arrests, and now, tragically, deaths. This isn't random. It's a direct result of an ideology that sees immigrants as invaders and anyone defending them as traitors. Those pushing mass deportations and aggressive enforcement don't see nuance. They see enemies everywhere. They operate with a mindset rooted in fear, division, and yes, deep-seated prejudice. Anyone showing basic human kindness, love for their neighbor regardless of papers, or a belief that people deserve dignity gets targeted. Why? Because that compassion exposes the cruelty at the heart of the system. It challenges the narrative that hardness equals strength. Look at the pattern. Thousands of masked, unidentified agents flood cities, clashing with locals, blocking police from scenes, and focusing probes on victims instead of their own actions. Protesters get labeled violent even when evidence shows otherwise. Courts have stepped in with temporary orders to curb excessive tactics against peaceful crowds, but appeals drag on while the damage is done. Public outrage grows. Thousands march in freezing cold, demanding accountability and an end to this siege-like approach. The truth is brutal. This aggression comes from the top-down orders and rhetoric that dehumanize opponents. When the highest office calls dissent insurrection or authorizes broad force without tight rules, it filters through the ranks. Agents feel back to act decisively, sometimes too decisively, because hesitation gets painted as disloyalty. Meanwhile, good-hearted people who believe in welcoming the stranger, helping the vulnerable, or just recording injustice become the targets. It's upside-down logic. Love for humanity gets you labeled the bad guy, while unchecked power gets a pass. We have to call this what it is: evil wrapped in excuses about law and order. True evil can't stand goodness because it reminds them of what's missing inside. That's why compassion triggers rage. That's why defending immigrants draws fire. It's not about safety, it's about control and punishing those who refuse to hate on command. But here's the powerful part: we don't have to accept this. Communities are fighting back through protests, legal challenges, public pressure, and refusing to stay silent. Minneapolis residents are organizing, marching, and demanding change even in sub-zero temps. Across the country, voices rise against the crackdown. This isn't weakness, it's strength and unity. When we stand together for fairness, dignity, and basic human rights, we expose the cracks in any system built on fear. The agents aren't the root problem. They're carrying out directives from leaders who thrive on division. Change starts by rejecting that hate-filled worldview outright. Choose love over cruelty, truth over lies, humanity over ideology. Demand better. Accountability for every shooting, transparency in operations, and policies that treat people as people, not problems. This fight isn't optional. It's about who we are as a nation. Will we let fear win, or will we rise up for what's right? Exposing Trump's force orders. The real story behind ICE clashes. Listen up. Folks, this is the unfiltered truth about how former President Donald Trump openly pushed Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and other federal agents to crack down hard on protesters. We're talking about real events, backed by public statements and reliable reports, not wild online gossip. What you're about to hear is a deep dive into those moments when Trump gave the green light for force, the bigger picture of rising tensions, and why it all matters for our rights and freedoms today. I'll break it down step by step, explaining each part so you can see exactly how it unfolded and what it means for everyday people like you and me. This isn't about stirring up drama. It's about shining a light on actions that crossed lines and sparked massive backlash. As someone who stands firmly against divisive politics that put power over people, I believe we need to face these facts head-on to protect our democracy. Let's start with the heart of the issue: Trump's direct command to use force without holding back. Back in July 2025, things were heating up during immigration raids in Ventura County, California. Videos surfaced showing protesters hurling rocks and bricks at ICE officers, and Trump didn't waste time reacting. He jumped on his Truth Social platform, his go-to spot for unfiltered messages, and laid it out plain as day. He addressed Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and the so-called border czar, Tom Homan, ordering them to tell ICE and other federal officers to pull over their vehicles, grab anyone assaulting them, and use whatever force is necessary to make it happen. He even called it total authorization for ICE to defend itself. Now, why does this matter? Think about it. Presidents don't just tweet casually. These posts carry weight like official directives. That phrase, whatever force is necessary, isn't some vague suggestion. It opens the door wide for agents to decide on the spot how much muscle to use, without clear rules to keep things in check. It wasn't a one-off rant either. This was Trump doubling down on a tough stance that echoed through his administration. For families in those communities, it meant fearing that a protest could turn deadly if agents felt threatened, even if most folks were just speaking out peacefully. This kind of language from the top can trickle down, making on-the-ground decisions more aggressive and less accountable. But this didn't happen in a vacuum. Zoom out a bit, and you'll see it was part of a larger wave of heavy-handed tactics against ICE protests across the country in 2025. The Trump team had ramped up immigration enforcement big time, sending agents into cities for raids and deportations. Protests popped up everywhere, from Los Angeles to Chicago, as people pushed back against what they saw as unfair treatment of immigrants and communities. Federal agents responded with tools like tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets, stuff that's meant for serious threats but ended up hitting crowds that included peaceful demonstrators. News reports and legal documents from the time paint a clear picture. In Los Angeles, agents unleashed chemical irritants on groups after some objects were thrown, leading to arrests and injuries. In Chicago, similar scenes played out, with National Guard units sometimes called in to back up ICE. These weren't random. They tied directly to the administration's push for stricter borders. For the people involved, it felt like their right to assemble and speak out was being trampled. Imagine showing up to voice your concerns about family separations or harsh detentions, only to face clouds of stinging gas or projectiles flying your way. It's not just about one protest. It's a pattern that built fear and division, making folks think twice about standing up. Then, things escalated even more in early 2026. After ICE agents in Minneapolis shot at protest participants, one time with fatal results, Trump didn't back down. Instead, he ramped up the rhetoric. He publicly warned that if state and local leaders didn't clamp down on what he called professional agitators and insurrectionists attacking ICE agents, he'd invoke the Insurrection Act. That's a big deal. It's an old law from 1807 that lets the president send U.S. troops into American streets for law enforcement, bypassing usual rules against military involvement in domestic affairs. Picture this: federal agents already clashing with crowds in Minneapolis over immigration actions, and now the threat of soldiers rolling in. Trump tied it all to his immigration surge, which had faced months of demonstrations and lawsuits from groups fighting for civil rights. He framed it as a simple choice: stop the protests or face the military. For residents there, it was terrifying. One day you're protesting what you see as overreach, the next you could have armed troops enforcing curfews or breaking up gatherings. This wasn't idle talk. It sent a chill through communities, reminding everyone that the government could turn inward with force if pushed. Critics from civil liberties circles didn't stay quiet. They called it out for what it was: a green light for excessive force. Groups like the ACLU and legal experts argued that Trump's words, like "whatever force is necessary" and the Insurrection Act threats, basically encouraged agents to go too far, even against mostly nonviolent crowds. They pointed out how this could stomp on First Amendment rights, the freedom to protest without fear of retaliation. In response, courts stepped in across several cities. Judges issued injunctions, temporary orders, to limit arrests and force used against peaceful protesters. These wins came from lawsuits filed by rights organizations, but the administration appealed them, dragging things out. It's a classic push-pull. On one side, advocates fighting to keep protests safe and legal. On the other, a government insisting on tough enforcement. For ordinary people, it meant real uncertainty. Could you join a march without risking your safety? These legal battles highlighted how Trump's directives blurred the line between protecting officers and suppressing dissent, putting everyday freedoms at risk. Of course, Trump and his team defended it all fiercely. Through statements from the Department of Homeland Security and Trump's own words, they argued that federal agents deserved full backing to do their jobs. If protesters got violent, throwing stuff or blocking operations, agents had every right to push back and keep enforcing immigration laws. They claimed that without this strong stance, violent elements would take over, making it impossible to secure borders or maintain order. From where I stand, this defense misses the point. Sure, officers need protection, but authorizing whatever force without strict guidelines invites abuse. It turns immigration policy into a battlefield where citizens exercising their rights get caught in the crossfire. And let's be real, this approach fits a pattern of prioritizing control over compassion, demonizing protesters as enemies rather than fellow Americans with valid concerns. In a country built on free speech, this kind of top-down aggression erodes trust and divides us further. Pulling it all together, Trump's public orders painted a stark picture. He commanded ICE to arrest and use necessary force against attackers, amid a crackdown that saw tear gas and bullets fly in cities nationwide. Later, he upped the ante with Insurrection Act threats in Minneapolis, linking it to ongoing protests against his immigration push. While defenders saw it as law and order, critics and courts viewed it as a threat to basic rights, leading to legal fights that continue to echo. These events aren't ancient history. They happened recently, in 2025 and early 2026, shaping how we handle protests and enforcement today. They remind us why we must demand accountability from leaders, ensuring force is a last resort, not a first response. When presidents issue broad authorizations like this, it risks turning our streets into zones of conflict where speaking out becomes dangerous. For immigrants, protesters, and anyone who values fairness, it's a wake-up call to stay vigilant. If you also support democracy and freedom, feel free to join me in this fight. Click follow, click subscribe, and join me. Divided we fall, and together we can knock down mountains. Through unity is the only way we can make a change. Thank you, stay safe, God bless, I love you all. Crowning Thoughts, True Speaker, Copyright 2025 by Santiago DC Maria, licensed under Creative Commons Attribution.